right, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jie Huang, and I am a senior associate at Scott Legal PC. And today we're going to spend some time talking about the EB-5 Investor Green Card Pathway and its rules and requirements. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Scott Legal is a full-service immigration law firm, and we offer immigration services in a number of different areas, including E2, E1, TN, L1, family immigration, national interest waivers, EB-5 investor green cards, of course, extraordinary ability visas, and more. The firm specializes in processing visa options for investors and entrepreneurs. EB-5 is a popular pathway for investors to obtain permanent residency in the United States, and we have successfully handled a wide variety of EB-5 cases. We will be continuing this webinar series, and we are doing at least 2 webinars a week on different immigration law related topics. And at the end of this webinar, we will be sending out a few useful tools to all participants. We will send you a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that we will go through today. We will also send you a link where you can download a guide that goes through this visa option in more detail. We will also send you a link where you can sign up for additional webinars that are coming up in the future. And this webinar will also be recorded and made available on YouTube. We will also send the link for that. We do encourage you to subscribe and hit the notification button, as we regularly do upload a variety of immigration law related videos that you may find helpful. We will also send you a link where you can set up a consultation with one of our experienced attorneys should you wish to discuss your case in further detail. Today, we're very lucky to have Ian Scott, the founder and managing partner of Scott Legal PC, to present today. He graduated from Harvard Law School and have extensive experience in processing a wide variety of EB-5 petitions. Finally, for any questions you may have, please feel free to add them to the chat box or the Q&A box, and we will try and get to all questions. So without further delay, let us get started with the webinar.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much, GA. And it is great to be here. And EB-5 is definitely a bit of a hot topic these days, given that we have the September 30th, 2026 date, which I'm going to explain the relevance of that. But definitely there's a lot of action and buzz in the EB-5 space. So before we get into much of that, I just want to talk a little bit about the two different types of EB-5 investment. So these are broken down into regional center and direct investment. And really, the profile of any given investor is going to be different depending on which one of these two options is selected. So when we're looking at a regional center, a good example of a regional center might be, let's say, a hotel chain that wants to build a new hotel and they want to raise money from a number of different investors. So they set up the EB-5 program, set up a regional center, and collect money from a number of different investors and give them a limited partnership unit. This type of investor is one that wants a fairly passive investment that doesn't really care about the return. They're really doing it just for the green card. The return is often zero or lower, even a negative return, because these projects do have very high administrative fees, sometimes $35,000 to $50,000 just for the fee alone. And as a result, the return, which usually is less than 1%, even when you add that all up, typically it will not give you a positive return over time. So people are really doing this for the green card. The projects are not government approved, even though they may have an immigration approval. That doesn't mean that they're government sponsored or that they're government approved. And the money that's being invested is an investment just like any other investment in the stock market or other place. And in fact, the regional center cannot guarantee the return or the return in terms of investment return or the return of your actual investment. So that's something to keep in mind. The regional center as well, the one good thing about regional center is that one of the aspects of EB-5 is that you have to create US jobs. And for regional centers, you can count jobs that are indirectly related to the actual program. So the regional center doesn't have to actually hire 100% of the people, the project doesn't have to hire 100% of the people. An economist is going to look more broadly at the surrounding area and the impact of that particular business on that area and create indirect jobs. And quite a large number of the actual jobs that are created normally are indirect jobs, and that number can be up to 90%. So, and usually it is. So the other thing is many people can invest in a regional center, whereas if it's a direct investment, you'll see that only one person can invest per company. So when we're looking at a direct investment, a good example of this could be an entrepreneur that wants to start a business. Let's say the entrepreneur wants to start a gym or something like that. And so they start a gym facility and they get the equipment, they hire the employees, and then they create the jobs themselves. And this gives them a lot more flexibility and control. And that's something that a direct investor really wants. So that's the typical profile of someone who is doing a direct investment. They are focused on control and managing the return themselves. As I said, only one person can get an EB-5 green card from per entity if it's direct investment. This is a rule that changed in 2022. But that's it, one person per entity. So if you do have multiple people, then there would have to be multiple entities set up. The program is more stable because the direct investment program is not subject to reauthorization, whereas the regional center project is subject to reauthorization. And that's where the September 30th, 2026 date comes up because the program has to be reauthorized. It's actually the next year, 2027, September, but there is a clause that says that any application that's filed before September 30th, 2026, that application is going to actually be adjudicated. So that's something to keep in mind. And the a lot of the time we see people moving from direct investment or the direct investment EB-5 from E2, and the E2 is they may have started a business already and invested some funds, and usually those funds can be counted towards the EB-5 investment as well. It depends. We do have to look at it, but that's something to keep in mind. Perfect. So during this presentation, we're going to look at really three areas. The first is going to be investment. The second is going to be job creation, and those really make up the two fundamental parts of the EB-5 program. And then the final thing that we're going to look at is how you file. So which forms have to be filed, timing, etc. So the basic requirement related to the investment is that you have to invest 800,000 or 1,050,000, and that's whether it's a regional center or a direct investment. The $800,000 amount is going to be the amount that you can invest if the project is located in a rural area or a rural area or a high unemployment area. Both of those are considered target employment areas. And the thing with with unemployment, high unemployment, the rate is that the unemployment rate has to be 1.5 times the national average, and the rural area is going to be designated by the local jurisdiction. And so the amounts would be invested, and if it's not a TEA, then it's going to be the higher amount. So then the amounts would be invested in a new commercial enterprise. So that's a business that was started after 1990. So it could be that a brand new entity has been set up. It could be that you're investing in an entity that already exists, as long as it exists after it was formed after 1990. And the investment can be made over time as well. So let's say that someone had an E2 visa and they invested $100,000 over multiple years. Then once they've made the full $800,000 or $1,050,000 investment, they can apply for the EB-5 program. The investment is investment that is money that was outside of the company and invested in either the regional center or the direct investment project, rather than retained earnings. So let's say that an individual had an E2 visa, and let's say that the business made $2 million in 1 year, and that was the net income that they had. And then the money went into retained earnings, and then the next year that money was spent. That $2 million doesn't count towards the actual investment. So that's something to keep in mind. It does have to be money that was outside of the company and invested into the company. The E2 and the EB-5 are very, very different programs. They're both investor programs and they both relate to investment and entrepreneurs, but that's really where the similarities stop or end. The E2 program is one that is based on a treaty between the US and the other country. And the investment amount usually is much lower. You can invest $100,000 or even less than that to get an E2 visa, whereas we've gone over the investment amounts for EB-5. The source of funds analysis is also very different. For source of funds, the approach taken with EB-5 is very much close to an audit, whereas E2, depending on which country the person's from, often will tend to gloss over the source of funds. And then E2, of course, is going to be based on it's only eligible to people who are nationals from certain countries. And then it is the EB-5 is an equity investment. So if you're doing a regional center, you're often going to get limited partnership units. If you're doing something else, you're going to get shares, like investing in a direct investment or other. You're going to get shares often, or membership units, or it could be some type of partnership units as well. But it is an equity type of investment. And the second big piece of the EB-5 program has to do with job creation. And so whether it's a regional center or a direct investment, you need to create 10 full-time jobs. And keep in mind what I talked about earlier with respect to indirect jobs. And that's why sometimes the regional center can be beneficial in that regard. But the jobs are not just any jobs, they're full-time jobs, and also they're full-time jobs for US citizens or green card holders. So if you are doing direct investment, it is very important to make sure that you are hiring US citizens or green card holders. So it is a good idea to register for a program called E-Verify, where that assessment is going to be done by the government right when the person starts employment. So you don't have to kind of worry in that instance if someone's given you a some type of false documentation like a green card or credentials that would be caught at that earlier stage. There does have to be a link between the investment and job creation. So a few things to point out there is that one, that's why purchasing a business, like so let's say someone was selling a gas station and you paid them $800,000 and it was in a targeted employment area and the money just went to the seller, that wouldn't qualify because the money doesn't have to, even if the gas station had 10 full-time jobs, that wouldn't qualify because the money doesn't have anything to do with job creation. In fact, the person that got the money is just the seller. And then, so in this case, if it could work if the buyer decided to invest the money and it went into the actual company and then was used to create new jobs, and then the 10 that were there wouldn't count. But that's something to keep in mind. And we already talked about the documentation of the full-time positions. So the direct investment program and the regional center program, they both often need a very detailed business plan that shows exactly who's going to be hired and when. So that is an important part of the process. And then we get to filing. So if when you're filing an EB-5 petition, you're going to file an I-526 petition. If it's a regional center, it's going to be an I-526E. And that is the petition that shows that you've invested and the petition that shows that the source of funds is all clean. Usually the source of funds section is the most significant part of the file. If it's in particular, if it's a regional center, both need source of funds and there's no difference in the documentation that's required for the source of funds. But if it's a regional center that already has approvals, then the key aspect that that you're going to have to look at is that your source of funds is clean. Um, the I-485, then after that has been filed, depending on which country you're from, because the category has to be current, you would file an I-485 or do consular processing. If you're in the United States, you would file a I-485 or could file an I-485. And if you're not, then you're always going to be doing consular processing. And you just have to work with an immigration attorney just to make sure that the category is current. So the category for most countries the category for most countries is current. When you look at nationals from China or India, there are many categories that aren't current. But it's something that you really have to work with an immigration attorney to check to see when you can file the I-485 if you are in the United States. And then after you've had the green card for 2 years, you're going to be filing an I-829 petition. And when you file the I-829 petition, that's going to be a petition that's filed to remove the conditions. So you're basically going to be saying at that point that I've created the 10 full-time jobs and providing evidence related to creating those jobs. And the program had a number of different changes that were made in 2022. One, the increase of the investment amount, and that mainly impacted the lower investment amount, the 800,000. That used to be 500,000. We talked about already that the program has to be reauthorized on September 30th, 2027. But as long as you file the petition by September 30th, 2026, and again, this only impacts regional center filings, but that's why there is a bit of a buzz because people want to meet that date so that they can be sure that their petition is actually going to be adjudicated. Then it's going to be adjudicated. The change in the TA rules, only the government can make this assessment. So sometimes you can still accurately verify because if you can go to the government issued census data and look at the unemployment rate, then that's going to be sufficient because that's what the government is going to use. And there are tools that can be used to assess whether or not something is in a TEA, but those you do have to scrutinize those tools extensively because the government is the one who makes the determination. So you may want to use the tool, but then also do backup to make sure that you like go to the actual census tract, for example, to make sure that it's accurate. There were a number of set-asides that were done in 2022, and these basically say that 20%, 10% and 2% of the uh, green cards are set aside for rural high unemployment and infrastructure projects, respectively. And what this means is that, at least for the time being, that if you're investing under the low investment amount, 800,000, because that's going to be for rural areas and high unemployment areas, the TEAs, then all of those categories are current for every country. So these are the reserved categories current for every country. The unreserved categories, they're not current for every country. They're current for most countries, but not every country. So that's something you have to look at. The filing, another big change was that the filing for the I-485, if you're in the United States in the past, before March of 2022, you could only file the I-485 petition after your I-526 had been approved. But now, with that change in rules, you can file concurrently. So this is a significant difference for people because it gives them the ability to stay, live, and work in the United States while the petition is pending. And sometimes this petition can take 4 or 5 years to be approved. And so you can apply for work and travel authorization during that time as well. Source of funds, the other changes that you are required now to document where the money came from for the administrative fees, so legal fees, regional center fees, and those can be quite extensive. The combination of those together can easily exceed $75,000 to $100,000. Ability to change programs, and there is limited ability to do this depending on if the regional center goes under or something like that. There is a possibility to do this. The other things to consider here are in particular, if you're doing the direct investment, you can't just put money in a bank account and then apply for EB-5. The government wants to see that you have appropriate number of commitments and or expenditures. There's no set amount, but you work with your immigration attorney to see, when you come to an amount that looks reasonable. And then also a lot of cases, you're going to be continuing to spend as the petition is pending. Loans and gifts are fine for EB-5. Unsecured loan is fine. Gifts are fine. Secured loans are fine. The issue with loans is that one is that you have to pay them. So if there's a loan agreement that says that you're paying, Harry or Sally, whatever amount per month, then you have to pay that amount every month because years down the road, they will come back and say, hey, show me that you've made those payments. Um, if it's a secured loan, if it's unsecured loan, no problem. If it's a secured loan, then you do have to also show information related to where you got the money for the security. So it can be quite an extensive process. And then if you're getting a gift, you have to get a gift letter, but also if the jurisdiction requires gift tax, you want to make sure that the person has paid that because the government can ask for it. And also, the gift, it can come from anybody. It can come from friend, relative. It can come from anyone. But you do have to, for both loans and gifts, you do have to also show the source of funds of where the person giving the loan or gift got the money from. We talked about considerations of purchasing a business already. There's no set amount that you have to own. You can own a fraction of a percent of the business, and we also said that you can't get any type of guaranteed returns. And we already also went through the difference between E2 and EB5. And I think, GA, we're going to skip the case study so we can go right to the next one. Perfect. So other things you could should be aware of, timing. EB5 takes a long time, unfortunately. It takes years to get the green card. So usually it can take 4 to 5 years to get the I-526 approved, and then it could be another 18 months for the actual I-485 green card. The one exception to this is if your project is in a rural area. The 2022 changes also indicated that those were supposed to be processed faster. So those are, we could see approvals for those I-526 approvals for those even in a year. And you do have to kind of make sure that you're tracking all this because if you're in the system for 4 or 5 years and 6 or 7 years, when you're looking straight out through to the I 485 and even longer when you're looking out to the I-829, you do have to make sure that you have some underlying basis for status. So that could be the I-485 filing, it could be something else. In particular, if you're doing the filing and let's say you're doing consular processing and you don't have any underlying basis and you have to renew your underlying visa, then you do have to kind of look at what type of visa you have and see if it is going to be appropriate to renew. Often we have parallel green card strategies, people who start EB-5 and maybe find something else. They marry a US citizen or they think you see that they might be eligible for national interest waiver and apply for that. So that's something to keep in mind. But planning is really key with respect to all of this. Perfect. And that is, those are all of the prepared remarks that I had. And certainly, if there are any questions, happy to answer those.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Let's see if we have any questions that have come up. I don't see any, and sorry, Ian, my my
Oh, no
camera
problem.
died.
No
My
problem. No
camera
problem.
died, so now we just
No, no,
have
no problem. No
the
problem.
logo. But yeah, I don't think we had any questions come up, and maybe checking the Q&A function as well. Yeah, no questions. So I think what we can do, Ian, is yeah, we can close here. Thank you so much
Perfect.
for
My
sharing your
pleasure.
expertise, and thanks everybody for participating today. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Sounds good. Okay. Thanks, Jay. And thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.